Well, Africa made its imprint on the blockchain and digital asset industries in 2021, but Bitcoin and the underlying technologies became more significant in 2022. The vast majority of banker customers anticipate that by the year 2027, a totally digital retail banking environment will be the norm. African countries continue to rank highly for adoption, with Nigeria, Morocco and Kenya leading the pack. Well, joining me now to discuss the central bank digital currencies and what this means for the continent is Mpho Dagada, who is a member of the Presidential Commission on the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Thank you so much, Mpho, for joining us on the Weekend Report this morning. You know, we're seeing this rise in digital asset adoption across the continent, but I think many of our viewers are curious, what exactly is happening to the financial ecosystem on the continent as we know it.
Thank you so much for having me, and good morning to all your viewers. The digital currency or the blockchain technology revolution, as we've sort of seen and have seen it unfold within Africa and the rest of the world, is really taking the world by storm. Because if you'd remember very well, a big catalyst to this movement was the COVID pandemic, as many people realize that, becoming digital truly is very important, number one. But number two, it's also very safe in terms of, getting or de-weeding with a lot of duplications of cash issues as well, and just a better currency control system. So with cryptocurrencies booming and people adopting them, central banks or reserve banks all around Africa have really had the pressure to really innovate, come up with the best ways to integrate, and also the best ways for them to be part of the digital revolution. So a lot of them have come up with these central bank digital currencies, and a lot of them are rolling them out. We're seeing in Nigeria, and as you said, in Kenya and South Africa as well, we're seeing that a lot of them have released policy documents for commenting, and a lot of them are looking for engagement, and a lot of them are looking at piloting and launching a lot of different programs to ensure that, digital currencies become very much a part of the ecosystems within Africa.
Yeah, looking at the prototypes that have been rolled out, as you mentioned, in Nigeria, slivers of them in Kenya and South Africa, would you say, looking at what's already been put on the table, would you say that what is being rolled out is favorable for customers, or is it another attempt by central banks to regulate, the finances and to regulate that area, sometimes to the disempowerment of customers and perhaps even to their detriment?
I think, one of the first things that we're grateful for is the fact that reserve banks are actually catching up to where technology is going. Because I think a lot of the times, we've had the fiat system very stagnant in the way that it does things, where we've sort of just seen the banks innovating, the banks becoming more agile, but the reserve banks themselves have been very stagnant. So we welcome this move by reserve banks, moving away from this stagnation into sort of more a proactive move to actually getting things done properly in the way that we'd expect them to do. Now, in terms of it favoring customers, I think that's a completely different conversation, because the customer is very comfortable with the innovative side of technology. If you'd notice, there's sort of talks about Twitter, Facebook integrating digital currencies, and, customers are very, very more comfortable with sort of the business side of things, innovating and implementing and integrating currencies, rather than the Reserve Bank having a bigger oversight in these digital currencies. So I think when it comes to the customers are proving that they're more comfortable with companies doing this sort of work. But in terms of oversight, in terms of governance, I think as governments and I think as the broader people out there that look at regulation, they're very happy and they're welcoming this decision by the Reserve Bank to be more active in getting involved.
Talking about this movement and the sort of proactive innovation that we're seeing specifically on the African continent, I'm curious, Mpho, what you think or what you make of, all this talk and conversation around the change in the world economic order. Come 2050, it's all going to look very different. Are these sort of innovative technological advancements that Africa is sort of running ahead into likely to contribute to that change?
I think that's a very good question, because the biggest problem that Africa's ever had in terms of expanding and growing itself has always been currency. The questions around why are African currencies so undervalued as compared to European or American currencies. And the second question being, well, we have the minerals. Why are our currencies still so stagnant when we own the minerals that sort of underlie or back these currencies as the world has sort of known them? And thirdly, transparency around, we've never really seen the open, transparent way in which these currencies are sort of valued. It's sort of being, given to us to say, well, Africa, this is how we value your economies and your currencies, and we see you as very risky economies. Now, with the advent of blockchain technology, as you would know, blockchain technology sets itself to sort of bring in a new way of doing things that's not really dependent on the political situation of that specific currency. If you look at, your Bitcoins, your Ethereums, they're sort of devoid of political or presidential hopefuls or, political regimes and all sorts of things. But they're more hopeful on, the people that are involved within that currency, the demand and supply that's important therein. So with the advent of this coming in, a lot of people are saying, well, for the first time, we'll be able to see trade happening within Africa and the rest of the world more seamlessly, where the rest of the world is not afraid of taking African currencies, because it won't necessarily be an African currency. It'll be a digital currency that's backed by a blockchain that's open and transparent to the rest of the world. So we're really seeing that it's going to push a lot of negativity against, trading African currencies, being involved in African currencies, and it's really going to push more integration into, the rest of the world currencies. But not only that, trading will also be more transparent and more welcomed within the African currency. We all know that, currencies like Zimbabwe are very shied away. This is the Zimbabwean dollar, because a lot of questions stand around how much of it has been printed. Is it well governed? When you put it now on a digital currency and, it's sort of open source, people can see how many are being created, then the movement then sort of becomes more transparent, people sort of welcome it more, and people sort of have a better control system of it because they can basically see what's going on immediately on a blockchain. So I definitely think it's going to help Africa become an economic powerhouse. And I also definitely think that, it's really going to help Africa participate better in the global economy, but also within Africa, we'll be able to trade much faster, much effectively, and much more efficiently with African currencies.
Yeah. 2022 may have been dubbed, the year for digital asset adoption in Africa. We also saw a slump when it came to, cryptocurrency in 2022, and I wonder if that has in any way created, a dampening effect for those who are still skeptical in their corners with regards to this recent adoption of digital assets and the general move towards digital currencies.
I think that the slump is warranted in cryptocurrencies, because we must also be aware of the fact that what really intrigues central banks and governments is the technology behind these cryptocurrencies, not necessarily, the price speculation. And we need to understand and accept it that in every market, there'll be speculators. And what we saw in the Bitcoin market, the Ethereum market, we saw a lot of people jumping in without really prior knowledge, speculation, FOMO, missing out on, my goodness, the price is jumping up, let me just get in, cash out quickly. And we've seen that happen, people jumping on board, cashing out quickly, making quick gains therein. And I think it had to happen because what drew people in was the technology. But what gave them the rush to keep putting in money was sort of these gains or this increase, of thousands and thousands of percents in growth when it came to these cryptocurrencies. However, it does not take away from the technological aspect that actually created and brought people towards, or their attention towards cryptocurrencies. So I think the slump is warranted, and I think unfortunately within the slump we've seen a lot of scams, being uncovered. We've seen a lot of reckless lending and a lot of reckless investing sort of happening, and speculation, the general public sort of jumping in without prior knowledge and research. And I think in every industry we had to see it happen. But now we're sort of buckling up to say, now that that all has happened, let's look at the fundamentals of this technology. Can it be implemented? Is it useful? And how do we go about implementing it?
Talking about those questions, those fundamentals that you're mentioning, South Africa's own financial controls authorities is attempting to answer said questions. Where are we in terms of our own progress in, adopting these digital assets and making the world of digital currencies something that isn't a language that South Africans are unfamiliar with, but a terrain that we can also delve into?
I think firstly I must, lambast the South African Reserve Bank with many other agencies when it comes to education, because I feel that's the first thing that South Africans have sort of failed to sort of get much information of, is the correct information regarding cryptocurrencies. And number two, the right support from these government agencies and also from the Reserve Bank with regards to digital entrepreneurs, with regards to people that are involved in digital cryptocurrencies. But I must also then come and be fair and say I'm glad that they have released a policy statement. I'm glad that they have released a framework that they are able to look at and constantly work and innovate in. But I do think that there's much more work to be done. And I do think that, as African currencies or as African countries, we stand more to gain from the advent of digital currencies than the rest of the world. Because we must be honest to say the dollar and, the pound and the euro, they've really had their, rally or their onset, or they've really had their movement sort of strengthened in terms of their currencies. But African currencies have really had the back foot when it comes to the big issues that we've seen with trust, the big issues that we've seen with really people really adopting them and people really using them in the way that they should be used. And I feel that African reserve banks and African governments should be the ones that are actually running forth faster than anybody else, because this is an opportunity for them to catch up to the rest of the world when it comes to currencies, whereas they've really suffered in catching up and actually making sure that they're on par or on the same level. So I really think that, yes, they have been doing enough in terms of really trying to innovate and really trying to move on with that. But in terms of them educating the general public on all of this, I really feel that, a lot of African people still feel there's blurred lines, with Nigeria sort of giving a blanket ban on Bitcoin without proper education to its people. So I really feel that in terms of them educating and in terms of them engaging, they've really done a very bad job.
Well, Mpho, thank you so much for coming onto our program and sharing your insights with us. That was Mpho Dagada, who is a member of the Presidential Commission on the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Up next.